We're a few minutes ahead of schedule, but I spoke to the Brattleboro team, and they're not adverse to jumping right in and getting started. So if at this time, all members from Brattleboro who are going to offer testimony could raise their right hand, and the court reporter will swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
So whenever you're ready, Steve.
So what, I can control it by this?
I believe so. Yes.
Awesome. So let me go, my name is Steve Gordon. I'm the CEO president at Brattleboro Memorial Hospital. Let me go there on the line and have folks introduce themselves.
Good morning, Brandon Reed, the Director of Finance.
Captain Brown, Chief Medical Officer.
Jackie Amadon, Director of Inpatient Services.
Angela Peterson, Vice President of the Medical Group Coverage.
So I just want to let you know, as we were leaving the hospital in Brattleboro this morning, we had 6 folks coming in from CMS to do our full 3-year CMS survey.
That happened to Gifford last year.
I
What
remember
a
that.
great feeling you must be having right now.
So driving here, we go by Okemo, and there's barely any service, and Dr. McGraw is having a little fit in the back seat because she can't download any of the documents we're looking for. But we're set. We've got great folks back at the hospital, so I have no fear that we will do well. So let me start off by saying, boy, what a difference a year makes. You know, I've been presenting to you for the last, I think, 5 years since the Fremont Care Board was funded by the legislature. And, you know, over the last several years, you've seen red, and I've seen red, and that's not a pleasant place to be. We're really happy to report our positive operating results. And the results are really are due to volume growth here. As I've talked about in the past, we've had physicians, a number of our independent physicians leave the hospital, leave the area, retire, and that really affected our volume. But in some of the things you'll hear today, I think a great job recruiting both physicians and associate providers to get us back to where we need to be. And I call that really kind of patient repatriation, getting folks coming back to Brattleboro and getting services at our hospital and with our medical staff. You have all this documentation, but really our volume growth is the story here. We've seen major increases in our physician practices, both on our relative value in terms of productivity and in terms of visit. Wound Care Center, which this group I think approved several years ago, is up by 24 visits. OR minor procedures are up by 33.3. Imaging, laboratory, oncology is up 20%, which is going to be reflected in our drug costs. Adjusted admissions up 11.3%. ED pretty much flat as it has been over the last several years. It's probably about 14,000 to 15,000. Inpatient volumes, admissions are up. Length of stay is down. That's what you want to see. So it's a shorter length of stay, and that reflects in terms of the number of patient days being down. So this is the story of the last several years in terms of our operating margin. Starting in 2016, negative, 2017, significantly negative, 2018 we started to claw back, and what we're projecting this year is an operating margin of 1.1%. So a great story here for BMH in our community. So on the summary of requests, 3.3%, 3.4% on charges, net patient revenue, 7.2, and again, that reflects what we've seen as a volume growth at the hospital and in the practices. Some of the issues that we'll face this year is we're going to implement a new general financial system called MultiView. We've been riding on a system called AS400 for a number of years. As you know, we migrated over to Cerner Community Work several years ago. I think Kat will tell you we're finally seeing the coming out of the fog of the Cerner implementation. Our next implementation, though, my good friend Brandon on my right is responsible that, and we think that will, and hope and pray and plan that will go well. Continued server optimization to make it more user-friendly. Workforce development has been really our one of our number one priorities at the hospital. We've implemented a nurse residency program. I think, how many nurses do we have now in the residency program? Four nurses. These are new nurses coming out, not part of the staffing mix. For how long, Jackie?
6 months.
6 months. That's a real attraction. We have now an LNA program. I think you're all well aware of our MA program that we partnered with Community College of Vermont. LNA, LPN programs with the Technical College. We have 4 nurses now that we're paying for to go for their BSN programs. We continue to have a great relationship with the Vermont Department of Labor. That was a program that yielded several individuals for environmental services, our housekeeping department. And we'll continue to utilize social media as well as recruitment and other tools in our toolbox, such as sign-on bonuses and the like. As I think all of you know, we've been the smallest hospital that has been in all 3 of the OneCare programs since its inception. I'm on the board. I also am on the board of the Finance Committee. As you know, we are probably the most reimbursement challenged hospital, being an MDH hospital, Medicare dependent hospital. Our critical access is not sold community. And MDH designation comes and goes depending on the federal budget. And we have 2 more years on our current extension. So we felt to go all in on OneCare was the right thing to do from a strategic standpoint, not exactly knowing where the federal government will treat us under Medicare moving forward. With the very difficult situations up at Springfield, we worked with Mike Halstead, we worked with the state, Tom Buechner, and we established an on-site OBGYN office in Springfield. We are obviously seeing the deliveries down in Brattleboro, which I think has yielded us a 60 plus deliveries. So the key for us at Brattleboro is to maintain deliveries over 300. That's sustainable. The bright side for us up in Springfield has been for those months to deliver in Brattleboro, get their prenatal, postnatal care in the community, and also to support some of the ancillary services such as ultrasound and lab at Springfield. So we hope to continue that effort. We have a long-term lease with our office there on the site of Springfield Hospital. And as I said last year, it's always a challenge for us in stretching our hospital resources, but we are committed in our community to address the challenges we have in Brattleboro. Our board is very focused on this, whether it's dealing with homelessness. As you know, we've had a vulnerable population nurse embedded in our homeless shelters. Substance misuse, we've funded a psychiatric nurse practitioner in our ED. Kat might mention our Suboxone administration in the ED, and our partnership, very strong partnership with the CRS and Retreat, which also focuses on mental health and obviously as well as our aging population in Brattleboro, with Wyndham County being the oldest county in the state. Some of the risks, you probably put any hospital at this table, and the risks are pretty much the same. Clinician recruitment and retention, but Ailey and her team have done a phenomenal job recruiting over the past year with the urologist, urology nurse practitioner, a new orthopedic surgeon looking at coming in from Canada. We've worked the system from an immigration standpoint, primary care with additional both physicians as well as nurse practitioners. We have new OBGYN that has started general surgery. We recruited a general surgery from Tom's Hospital over in Southwest that just started today. And hospitals, and a little new wrinkle is a dentist has joined us. That dentist position is actually not funded by the hospital, but from our parent corporation, Southern Vermont Health Services, Inc. And we've developed a very unique program to establish a dental clinic predominantly for Medicare patients or patients that can't pay with our local United Way, Windham County United Way. And they just opened, and Aileen, how many patients now?
They serve 200 patients.
200 patients in a little over, under a month. So we have a part-time dentist, and we're actively recruiting for a full-time dentist. And key recruitments for us is orthopedics. We have one of our orthopods is looking forward to retirement. We keep telling him no, he's looking forward to retirement this year. One of our OBGYNs is actually moving and relocating to Manchester, New Hampshire. So we have another recruitment for OBGYN, and we're constantly recruiting for primary care, pretty much like any other hospital. Risk, ACO, risk performance. As I said, we're all into all three programs, but that is, constantly on our minds in terms of risk mitigation and the challenges we have from a standpoint of one of our tertiary hospitals, which is Dartmouth, is not part of the program, so we're constantly encouraging them to jump on the bandwagon. Cerner is, I'd be reticent or not honest in putting Cerner up there. We're still coming out of that fog, as I mentioned. The other issue we're looking at, especially as it relates to data mining, to pull information out of Cerner, we are on Community Works like Mount Scotty, so there's just a little bit of complexity in trying to customize that program. But we also have to look at how we're going to archive our legacy systems, of which 7, at least 7 legacy systems that we have at the hospital. Contract temp labor, Jackie can talk about this, but we probably have about 10% of our nursing man hours, which equate to about 11 FTEs, our contract temp labor. And we're totally focused on reducing that amount through some of the things we mentioned before in terms of those efforts. OB deliveries, we want to keep those deliveries coming to Brattleboro. We're committed to the Springfield moms and the services up in Springfield. We are involved in nursing union negotiations with AFT at this point in time. Current nursing contract ends in the end of September, so we have active negotiations there. Some of the CMS proposed reductions, what's always on their list is provider-based billing for our physician practices. So we're on a constant state of vigilance, watching CMS and what reimbursement changes might exist for both the hospital and our medical staff. As I mentioned, implementing MultiView, which is the new general financial system. And as I said in the past, we've got a lot of stuff that we're focused on is not going to yield short-term results. But we know it's the right thing to do. And we ask you always to look at that prism, or that lens, as you look at our performance. Because those are the things that we truly believe in, our board is very committed to. It's important to our community. But you might not see great returns over the first couple of years. But it's what our community needs and what the hospital is focused on. Opportunities. Aileen and her team have done a great job in terms of physician and allied health provider recruitment. We, several years ago, formed a regional psychiatric strategy group with both the retreat and ACRS. We're kind of looking at, if we had a blank piece of paper, how would we design the mental health system in our area? So that's something we're going to work on this year with our 2 partners. Continued collaboration with Dartmouth, Hitchcock, and Cheshire. As you know, we developed a strategic partnership several years ago, which yielded exceptional physicians in our emergency room. One of the few hospitals in the state that all the physicians are board-certified emergency medicine physicians associated with Dartmouth and with Cheshire. So we share the same ED group that Cheshire has. We migrated our radiologists over to Dartmouth. Our pathologist went over 2 years ago, and this year we're looking at cardiology. non-invasive cardiologists, sharing that group and growing that group at Cheshire. So there's a lot of benefit for and real benefit for our community and for our physicians and providers with that relationship at this point in time, and it'll continue to grow, we feel. Telehealth, we've expanded our to tele-ED and tele-neonatal intensive care programs are on the docket this year. I mentioned this last year, our LGBTQ initiative. We have now a clinical and educational collaboration with Fenway Health, which is the nation's predominant program dealing with the LGBTQ community out of Boston. We actually are starting our internal education this month with folks from Fenway. So that is something that is a real focus for us in our community, and we feel we can do a better job with the healthcare for the LGBTQ plus community. And doing it with Fenway will yield some, I think, some great results. And both from an internal standpoint, in terms of our facing towards that community, but also on the clinical side too. New patient satisfaction survey strategies. We were doing a, how many questions? 55 question survey for anyone that came to the physician offices. It's a little long. I would get these back to you saying, you need to shorten this. So now we are going with a very shortened survey using modern-day communication like texting and email. Our Ron Reed modernization project, you all approved back in October of 2017. We are still waiting for Act 250 approval from District 2. I will tell you, it's been a very frustrating process. We went ahead and we installed, part of that project was $2.53 million for replacing our 3 aged boilers, which are 35, 40 years in the making. We went at risk because we could not afford to lose boilers in the middle of the winter. And we do have our permit to go ahead and finish that project, which basically is finished. We have submitted now for the full Ron Reed modernization project, which included replacing our 3 antiquated ORs as well as 2 floors for new medical offices to replace some of the buildings that we have around our campus, and we're still waiting for that. I think at this point in time, we're going to look at a spring start date for that project because I don't want to start it with winter conditions. And I'll probably be back talking to Don and Jerry about an extension on that. And I religiously file our updates to Donna. We have a good working relationship. But I will tell you, it's been an incredibly frustrating process with our District 2 Act 250. And then our continued initiative with OBGYN. I think one of the things we can do is continue to work with folks at Springfield. What other services, what other specialty services can we help provide them, whether it's general surgery, urology, those kinds of things, because we have space in our medical office up there. So, with that, I'm going to turn it over to the exciting stuff, the financial metrics. And Brandon, as you know, was his rookie year last year, and is excited to be permanently on the varsity team now. So, Brandon?
Good to be back and good to be in the black. That definitely makes it a little bit more exciting for us as accountants. First off, I'll say that most of these numbers came from either the staff analysis or our audited financial statements. Projected numbers are from 6/30 to the year end, and my whole team worked on this together. And it was quite a project, so if there are questions, I can take them back and provide some clarification. Well, starting off with the profitability or the earnings metrics, things look good. I mean, you can see the bell curve, you can see the reverse bell curve really coming up now into 2020. The margins are more healthy. The total margin coming in at 2.1% is the only margin that's a little bit below the averages, but the operating margin puts us in a good spot with the statewide averages and some of the comparisons that came in the staff analysis. The liquidity metrics, our ability to meet our near-term financial obligations also come in in a good spot related to the state averages and the comparables. Current ratios are up, days cash on hand are up, payables are coming down a little bit from the actual 117 related to our center implementation, and it's receivable as well. So that feels good. The capital metrics, these are really related to our upcoming modernization project. So the age of the plant here,
Just getting a little closer to the light.
the age of the plant is still going up until it starts to go down. And you've got the cash flow long-term debt, you've got the debt service coverage, and the long-term debt capitalization. All these are showing the reality on the actuals when we're coming into the end of the projected 19, and then again 2020 is going to be where we do the majority of the modernization project. When we did our 19 budget, we had some thoughts that we would be a little further along. So some of the projected numbers for 19 also had those assumptions that we would be farther along with our modernization project. And we'll see that in the balance sheet later. The P&L. The P&L is, the projected year end is on the left, the 19 budget's in the middle, and the 2020 budget is on the right. The variances show for both projected to the 19 budget and the 2020 to the 19 budget. The year-end projections, the big numbers that are sticking out, the free care is up over budget, and that's due to more folks applying for free care and being accepted for free care and us granting them that free care. The other operating revenue is up 20% from budget, and the driver there is the 340B program. We've had a good year with the 340B program, a favorable year. We also had 2 successful audits, which is even better than the numbers. We had an internal audit that was done, and we had HRSA come out and do an audit about 3 months ago, and that's a good thing. The money from that program goes back into our underserved populations and folks that drive our additional percentage, so Medicaid patients get that result in some of the programs that Steve showed earlier, some of those community benefits. Coming down into the expenses, looking at the interest, there's a 33% we're off budget there. That's mainly due to the reverse of our swap agreement. We had a swap agreement in place for some of our long-term debt, and it's been favorable for us this year, so we're seeing a little bit there. The other operating expenses, those are 13.3% over budget, about $2.9 million, and that information's in the narrative, but the big drivers there are the oncology. We talked about the oncology program and the travelers, which we'll talk about again later, the temp care and security for some of our one-to-one watches for mental health and other patients in the ED in other areas of the hospital. The overall non-operating revenue is down about 14%, and that is due to market fluctuations. The market hasn't been as big to us this year as it was the last year, but not bringing us down where we have a negative margin, and you can see in the bottoms the total margin for the projection is 1.8 and 1.1 operating margin, both up from prior years. The balance sheet is variance due to the modernization project or the lack thereof of getting it going in 19. We did get our boilers purchased, 2 large boilers and installed, and we are close to signing the financing paperwork with United Bank to take our, bring some debt into the equation. And you can see that between the 2020 projection in the long-term liabilities and also in the net property, plant, and equipment. You can see the assets that are going to have on that. 4 designated assets represent our investment portfolio, where another bit of that modernization project will come from. Overall, we remain healthy due to fiscal conservatism. We spent a lot of hard work on expense management and accounting. We revised our PO policy and our AP policy. We made it a little bit tighter for people to sign off on purchases. And I think that put a greater attention on things, and the directors followed in line, and that was a good operational efficiency there. Cash flow statements. And again, as I mentioned, overall, we take a conservative approach. The money that comes out of our operations is used to fund operations first, capital needs, and community benefits and programs as well. And again, our mission is for our community benefit, our patient satisfaction, and our employee satisfaction. section as well. Some of the numbers that I'll point out that we do have a total cash from operations that is net income. That is a good thing. You can see the cash from investing activity, which is our purchasing capital assets, really picking up in the 2020 budget, and as well as some of the depreciation. Coming down into the financing activity, there again, that's where we're picking up our bond. For the run rate, that was budgeted again in 19, but will actually take place in 20. And coming down to the bottom, what I like is a change in fund balance, less than net income, looking at 2020, 2.1 million. That's a good number for us, positive. And ending cash down just a little bit, slight decrease in ending cash at 4 million. And when we look at the net operating cash and operating cash to net sales, we are about 5 cents on every dollar in those two ending cash dollars, dropping just a little bit. I talked to reconciling the P&L. Again, the gross revenue is projected to be 3.1 over budget due to higher volume of inpatient days, the birthing center, imaging, and oncology. In some cases, expenses fall as well. And that patient revenue fixed payments projected to be 0.7. Sure. Net patient service revenue and fixed payments, which includes our capitation payments, is projected to be 0.7% under budget and under the budget projection variance cap of 5%. Expenses are projected to be 1% under budget. However, we continue to be over budget in contract temp labor and drug costs. So that's it. Financial operations, we talked about, there's some just consistent themes coming right through here, but the expense drivers, again, we're talking about contract labor, drug costs, that's security for one-to-one watches, and revenue cycle consultants and EMR optimization. It's a new day and age for these systems, and in healthcare, you don't only have an ERP, but you have an EMR, and they are finicky, they take a lot of work to keep optimized. Lots of little gadgets, and we find ourselves trying to constantly optimize that system. Smart billing collection can go off without a hitch, and our AR base can come down, and we can get our cash quicker. But that's that going forward there. Cost.
Let me ask you, do you all need any clarification on the security for one-to-one watches? These are folks in our emergency department that are either EE or are somewhat unstable or violent, and we need to have our contracted security force watch those patients and assist the staff. I think the number was close to $150,000, and that's not including our own staff that we deployed and also assist in caring for those patients. And that's obviously reimbursable expense, but a huge expense for the hospital.
The cost containment efforts, which are in process, and it's not always been in process, evaluating NIA and his workers' comp program is a specific activity, but looking where we can leverage group purchasing options, increasing participation in the purchasing contract, reducing the use of contract labor. We talked about the nurse residency program, the RA program, and the use of ER techs. Another one we worked hard on this year is reducing the use of outside reference labs. That's a big cost for us. Tests are ordered, they're tested, we send the tests out, we get charged for those, and we don't get paid for those often. So we looked at what can we do in-house, so we've got additional in-house testing equipment, capital purchases, and some new pricing from outside reference labs to see if we can find the right lab for us and save some money there. The capital budget investments, non-CON capital budget. This is for the upcoming year, fiscal 2020. Not monies in our operating budget, but monies that come off our balance sheet. The historical repository is what we talked about earlier. That's that data warehouse for us to sunset 7 systems into one spot. And it's not as simple as just archiving the data off in position. We need to go back and actually look at that data for patient uses. So it's not as simple as it can seem, and they're quite expensive. Upgrading the phone system and the PDX server, constantly looking at where we can enhance the technology for our patients. That's that right there. Contingency monies for what's unanticipated. PC replacements, that's a multi-year plan to replace and upgrade our PCs. The sand upgrade, another IT opportunity there. The infusion pump wireless capacity, not my toys, but someone's toys. There again. Expensive toys, but wireless capacity, I think everyone knows, I mean, everything is moving so fast. It's all about data collection. Wireless gives the ability to measure patients without having them attached to wires, better patient care, more accurate data. The cheap hotback spectrum, workstation upgrades, that's another one. And it was under 60K dollars. The rock read modernization project was approved in the fall of 2017. There's the number there. Half of that will be funded for equity, half of that will be funded for debt. We're waiting on the Act 250 final approval, and as we mentioned, the boiler plant has been installed and completed in the 19 budget. The long-range financial outlook, very similar to last year, although we got the numbers in the black this year. The operating margins budgets remain positive, but well, the hospital's 5-year average is -0.7. The long-term objective is to maintain that positive operating margin to fund both capital and operating needs, community programs, and the hospital's mission. Historically, we've not had issues with compliance. And that is the financial piece.
So Haley's gonna handle total cost of care, and I'm sure you can all read that chart. So go over it.
Thank you. So at BMH, we strive to keep the quality of care high while keeping the cost of care low. Some of these metrics help to provide a gauge of how we are doing in that capacity. The data that you see here comes from Care Vermont as well as Blueprint for Health. We work closely with OneCare, as you mentioned previously, our relationship with all 3 payers. We have an ACO steering committee that meets monthly, and it's made up of physicians, many of us here at the table, and a patient advocate who reviews this data and helps us to make decisions on future programs and our current services. We also work closely with Blueprint. All of our primary care practices have achieved level 3 status for patients in our medical home. We plan to do the same when we attest next month. So the inpatient admissions, this data comes to us from OneCare. For all of the 3 plans demonstrated here, we are in the lower spectrum of utilization compared to the rest of the state. For the inpatient cost per member per month, for Medicaid and Medicare, for the 3 rates that you see there for each payer, we are in the lower spectrum. For Blue Cross Blue Shield, we're significantly lower than the rest of the state. When it comes to the 30-day all-cause readmission, this is another OneCare data point. For the Medicaid data, we are lower. For Medicare and Blue Cross, it was hard to compare us to the rest of the HSAs in the state as there wasn't a great deal of data available. The outpatient rate per capita, this is a Blueprint measure, and our rate is 6% lower than the statewide average. When it comes to the potentially avoidable ER visits, this is another Blueprint metric, and it talks about visits, whether that could be potentially avoided ER visits. So perhaps if the patient could call the primary care clinician, they could have avoided going to the ER visit, things like cough, cold, strep throat. Our rate is 49.7, and that's 21% lower than the statewide average. This is a rate where the lower you are, the more favorable you are. And in regards to the advanced imaging rates, our rate for our health service area is in line with the statewide average. Our resource use index is at 0.98, and our 5-year growth rate, which is at 3.5%, which is the target set forth by the State Council. We have implemented many strategies over the years to help keep the quality of care high while keeping the cost of care low. This is a list of just some of those strategies. I'll highlight some of the most important ones to our organization. A big initiative for us last year that's continued into this year is embedding RN care coordinators into each of our 12 outpatient practices. Those care coordinators focus on transitions of care, as well as creating care plans for our most at-risk patients, the high-risk and the very high-risk population. We have a robust community health team that cares for patients in between their visits with primary care clinicians and other specialties. We have a post-acute care department that helps us to keep our readmission rate low. This is a team of physicians who provide 24/7 care to our local nursing homes and assisted living facilities. Steve mentioned the implementation of the dental center, the Windham County Dental Center. This provides access to care for Windham County's most vulnerable patients, adults on Medicaid, and keeps patients unnecessarily out of the ER and a place for them to receive care where they actually need it. Also, our 24/7 primary care clinician call, where our primary care clinicians are available to our patients in a 24/7 capacity to answer their questions and provide care. And we also have a 24/7 nurse first line for our pediatric populations. All right, thank you all. We'll open up to questions.
Hey, John, you want to start?
Sure. I just had a couple questions about your presentation. But first I wanted to start with the blueprint data because I have the blueprint profile from 2017, which was the most recent that I found online. And it does, and it's not exactly matching up with the data that you provided. So I just wanted to check. Oh, you have the 18 data.
18 is one.
Okay, great. Well, that's good, because it looks like you've made some improvements from the 17 data, so that's wonderful. Thank you. All right, hold on. So I wanted to talk spend a little more time on the increase in net patient revenue request. Because of course, as we know, we ask hospitals to come in at 3.5%, and your request is over that. So can you give us a little bit more analysis or commentary on what you see as driving the increase in the net patient service revenue? And is the change at all, like I can hypothesize some reasons as what I might think that would be related to your EMR implementation, whether your shift of the docs to DH could be changing volumes, you could have more people. Could you just talk a little bit about what's driving that?
Well, it's really, as you reported, it's been volume growth.
What's driving the volume growth?
Well, I think one is we've seen, as you saw, a significant growth of over 10% of physician practices. And when you see that kind of growth, you're going to see growth in imaging, you're going to see growth in laboratory. And I think, 3 years ago I came here and I said we were in the perfect storm. We lost 3 of our longtime independent primary care physicians that had 6,000 patients. Those patients we could absorb in our existing practices. So Ailey and the team did a phenomenal job in recruiting new, both allied health professionals, nurse practitioners, PAs, as well as physicians. So I almost look at it as patient reattribution or repatriation of folks that didn't have a physician or might have gone elsewhere for their care, and now being able to receive their care in the community. So that's where I think the growth has come from, or I know that's where the growth has come from, and that's all then downstream growth. And it's hard at the hospital level to say if we don't get what we're looking for from a net revenue standpoint. I don't want to say to a patient, I'm sorry, our CT is closed because we went over the number. That's not how we need to look at things. We need to look at where the volume is coming from, which we have done and shared with you. So I think it's a good story for us. And the other side of this is we're a low-cost provider, too, as you've seen in some of the information that Amy has shared with you. So hopefully, Robin, that answers the question.
Thank you. It does also seem like you've been working collaboratively with others in the region, both in Cheshire and now with Springfield, looking at how to kind of collaborate around different services. I wonder if you could provide a little bit more information about sort of considerations or philosophy that you bring to those sorts of strategic partnerships. How do you think about what services should be in Brattleboro versus other places?
So I'm going to have Kat, Dr. McGraw, kind of talk a little bit about that.
We're committed to bringing the services that are really appropriate for a community hospital to our hospital to provide to our community. And part of doing that is having access. And there are services that we don't need 24/7. We can't support. Our community is not large enough to support on an everyday basis. And so those are some of the things that we've also looked at how to do collaboratively with Cheshire and also Dartmouth. So really it's providing our patient population the services they need as close as possible to home in ways that are responsible and that we can assure quality. So by doing it collaboratively, we're a little bit better off for us and the patients.
Can you talk a little bit more about the RN care coordination in the outpatient practices? It looks like that was an area of significant growth recently, and can you kind of talk about how that works and with the community health team and other care coordination resources in your community? Because I don't really understand where the value add is versus where it may be redundant, and so trying to understand how you view that would be helpful.
Question. Well, essentially, we have an RN care coordinator in each of our health outpatient practices, and they are focused on creating care plans in a couple of different ways. One, we utilize the data that One Care provides to us about the high risk and the very high risk patients. Referrals also come to them from primary care clinicians who, when they're seeing patients every day, see a need for care coordination, whether it be food insecurity, transportation needs, some additional support in the patient's action plan around their dietetic care. So a myriad of reasons that our primary care clinicians may refer. We work very closely with our community health team. We have weekly meetings with our care coordinators and the community health team where we go through case conferences to help make sure that the very point that you raised about redundancy is mitigated. We have slim resources and we don't want them to be providing the same service to the same patient population. So we're very considerate of who's providing what and how is that achieved. Something that's been helpful to us is having the use of Care Navigator, where our care coordinators, the community health team, and also the local entities who are caring for patients through care coordination can document those services so that at a glance we can check and see what has been provided and what's missing. And oftentimes the what's missing is where our RN embedded care coordinators will help fill those gaps.
Thank you. My notes from reviewing your stuff, so that's just one. Yeah, I think I'm good.
Okay, Tom.
I want to thank you and your team for the tour a few months ago. I think I've been to every hospital now, and last year I think this time I think I only been to 2, so except for the one in which used to be Putnam Memorial, now Southwestern. So a couple of questions here. So I'm looking at the free care plans, looking at free care costing a little over $1 million in 2018, up 800 or so thousand for in 2019 perspective, and then up again for 2020 budget at 2.8 million. And that's a fairly rapid growth rate, and just curious what you see happening there.
Free care is estimated on target actual activity. And really it comes down to folks applying for free care. And so
Can you put that mic a little closer, please?
we we start our budgeted action, prior year actual. Free care is one where individuals have to apply for that care, and then go through the application process and all the federal guidelines for that, and poverty levels and such. So we've seen an uptick in who's applying for free care and actually getting granted free care. It's a tough one to track because of that. You know, if it's, and it's certain services that tend to generate more free care than others. So I would say it follows closely with bad debt, kind of completely different from bad debt. I don't have anything else to add on free care. Does that help answer the question?
What I heard you say is that kind of driving off recent trends, and those trends are up.
So what we do to make sure that patients are aware of free care is we advertise that free care, and that's something that we do. So we have an individual who goes into inpatient rooms when babies are born and they're on Medicaid. We'll have this person go up and talk to the mom at the right time, get the baby in the mom enrolled if we need to. But a lot of it is just that. We have our person go out, meet with the patients, and ask them if they would like to apply for free care. Some deny, and some accept it.
Could that be some of the particular pediatric business coming up in Springfield?
It could be. That could be a piece of it for sure.
I think also, that's one of the missions for the vulnerable population nurse who's embedded in homeless shelters. It is trying to get them onto the patients and the families onto Medicaid, and if not, applying for free care. So we're actively engaged in that effort.
That's good. So I got a little lost kind of looking at your payer mix history. There was a phrase, a reference that talked about kind of the realignment of contractual allowances between commercial and Medicare. So I kind of went back to 2018 to look at the changes to 2020 in the adaptive material that we had. And so on the commercial side, from 2018, it was at 41% in 2018 and up to 55% in 2020 budget. Medicaid stayed the same, 13%, and Medicare dropped from 45% down to 31% over that one-year period. Those are pretty steep movements, and I'm just wondering, is that mostly driven by these contractual realignments, or is this actually following the line?
When you're referring to the contractual realignment, the contractuals that were routing to the wrong account, we had, that's a result of the certain implementation. So we had some of our Medicare contractuals routing to our commercial account, if I have that right.
That was about $3 million.
Yes. And so the contractuals, again, are payer contractuals, can also include denials, can also include write-offs, timely filing write-offs and such. So that's another one where the number is difficult to put a finger on. Again, I'd have to go back and actually do an analysis on 18, 19, 20. Michael Rogers pulled that analysis together specifically. I know the details of the system, though.
Most of the movement that we see in the payer mix from 2018 to 2020 has to do with these realignment of the contractual.
Yes, mainly due to the contractual issues, and again, as our attributed lives pick up under Medicare and Medicaid, that also can cause a little bit of a shift too. So trying to put a finger right on it with some of the attributed lives is difficult. We don't trend them and track them in the same manner when we're calculating contractuals. Contractuals are based off actual history, and the one care lives, attributed lives, we get our fixed prospective payment, and then the charge and the contractual are both adjusted off. So there are two adjustments for the one care patients.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I don't have to do it today, but I ran a little column off to the side on your utilization metrics, and from 2017 through 2019 projected. And what I saw there was that they were all down, two of them on a trending basis. And an example is adjusted admissions was down at a 3.3% rate. And I see in your presentation today that you used physician visits and you used RCU measurements. And in our adaptive material, there are no RCU data presented, so it's kind of hard to tie up to that. And in terms of physician visits, in 2018, it was 238,320. 12, 2019, 260, 200 and, there's, let me get this number right. 226,270, so it was a drop, and then it's back up big time at 265,000 in 2020. So, you know, I kind of look at the sum, the collective of all these utilization metrics, and they appear pretty flat to negative. But it looks like you're hoping for a big turnaround in 2020.
Well, I think we saw a big turnaround. And my numbers represent actual to actual, not actual to budget. So I'm looking at all those numbers in our presentation, making our last year's actuals compared to this year's actuals, because I think that's a better story to tell in terms of what's happening on the volume side of the equation. So again, going back, we had some very difficult volume years as we lost some long-term providers. And as you know, and as well as orthopedics, it doesn't take much in a small hospital. You lose one or two providers, you're going to have substantial decreases in your volume.
So when you say actual, you're talking 2018 actual to 2019 projected.
Yeah.
The most recent number.
No, it's actually through, I'm sorry, June. It's through June of 2018 compared through June of 2019.
Okay.
Not projected.
Okay.
I apologize. Yeah.
So you had a quote in there in presentation item number 6, which said, more than anything else, inadequate reimbursement for Medicare and Medicaid was driving both the cost shift and low margin. And I noticed in your presentation up here, you had patients with some of the population health activities. Do you see cost shift as a threat to care reform as a possibility?
I think the bigger threat to us, and I was talking to Jessica before this, and I think Robin knows, is, you know, we're, our only designation for our largest payer, which is Medicare, is MDH designation.
Yeah, let me ask you from the mic.
Yeah. We're the only designated MDH hospital in the state. That's Medicare dependent hospital. We're not critical access. We're a PPS hospital. We're not sole community like a Bennington or a Central Vermont. And every year that I come before you, I sort of don't know where we're going to end up in reimbursement with Medicare, which is our biggest payer. We have 2 more years left on the existing budget, the federal budget, to support the MDH hospitals, of which I think there are probably only about 200 left in the country. What's interesting is Cheshire, which is 21 miles across the river from us in New Hampshire, is also an MDH hospital. So that to me is my big concern, is what's going to happen with MDH. And that is one of the reasons why we've been fully on board with OneCare, because I think OneCare has that opportunity, as we look at all payers coming in, to create a much more sustainable financial and reimbursement future for Brattleboro. Because I'm really, as I've shared with you all, since the inception of Green Mountain Care Board, the concern I have with the federal budget always, and MDH is always on the cutting block. And there have been years that I've come to you, and I don't even know if we're going to get MDH approved in the federal budget. So our congressional delegation has been very positive towards that. That's my biggest concern, and you know that would impact obviously a cost shift. If we lose that MDH, if OneCare is not successful, because we are the most reimbursement challenged hospital because of our limited designation as an MDH, not critical access, not sole community, certainly not an academic medical center. That has me very concerned. Not this year, not next year.
Let's see. I'm good, thank you.
If you could turn to page 12, I too am challenged by the increase you're asking for in NPR. And one of the things, and Brandon, you may need to get back to us on this, but when I look at your projection, and I'm assuming that's the better thing to look at for 2019, and I compare that to your 2020 budget, the increase for the revenues is up 3.1%, but the deductions from revenue are up significantly less. If you take, basically I'll show you what I'm doing. If you take the 100 million in deductions from revenue that you have, and you compare it to the 179, and then you, in gross revenue, so I'm doing kind of a gross to net, if that relationship was the same when you get to the 2020 budget, it would be 106 million. And I'm just concerned that there's either something going on in your forecast from the gross line up top. The other way to look at it, in the budget for 2019, you're at 173, you're going up to 179, yet your net patient revenue is staying flat, 83 to 83. So I'm actually concerned because you guys are a hospital that has had, operating profit issues in the past, and you've lost money for several years. And when I look at your deductions and one of the more challenged hospitals as far as the payer mix, I just want to understand why that relationship wouldn't stay the same. And if it did, that's going to be a significant drain on your bottom line because it would drop to the bottom line. There's just because the other thing on your forecast, your operating expenses have stayed about flat, even though you've gone up $6 million on revenue. You've actually gone down, which is quite good. So it might be something. Do you see what I'm saying? It's just most hospitals, because you have a rate increase, when you do the rate increase, your deductions tend to go up because you don't get it back from Medicaid and Medicare, is what we would assume. So, it's typically the deductions go up more or higher than the top line. So I just really want you to go back and kind of double check that, because obviously that's a big driver of the 7.2% increase, because the other piece is your bad debt and free care are going up quite a bit, so that's kind of offsetting some of that increase at NPR. You're actually going higher. So I just am not comfortable with your reconciliation yet of how you're getting to a 7.2% NPR. It's actually higher than that if you adjust for the fact that you have higher bad debt and free care in there. And again, that deduction piece going across just doesn't make sense. And it actually, if you go back to 2018, it would be more similar to 18, what you're doing in 20, but then that means 19 is wrong. So something in there is just not really jiving, and it means you have an answer now or something you might follow up.
We'll have to break that down.
Yeah, okay, because I'm just concerned that you might find your gross to net is going to generate less dollars, and your expenses then are going up, the 6.1%, and you may actually lose money. And again, I'm still challenged on the 7%, growth rate on the top line, because you guys haven't historically seen that type of growth rate, and you're not asking for an exorbitant commercial increase of 3.4%, so it's not like you're making it up with that. So if you could get back and just reconcile, and again, I know projections sometimes are a challenge, but it just doesn't make sense. The deduction piece, and I know you've had some stuff with reclassing Medicare, and so it may not be clean, that may be the difference between your budget to projection, but then when you look at projection to 2020, which I think is the right thing to look at, you're only moving 3.1% up top, and you're moving a lot more. So if you could get back to me on that. I know you get what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I may have lost a lot of people over here, but I
I think
think.
you covered it when we did the multi-year analysis too, with 6 out.
Yeah. The other thing I just want to touch a little bit on is if you go to the next slide, and maybe you guys just don't record it there, but on the risk reserve, because it's my understanding that you guys are booking the reserve for your full reserve. I thought you were booking for both 19 and for 20. I just wanted to talk a little bit about that as far as, the compounding effect of that, because, that would be assuming that we're going to hit the worst case for all three payers in 19, the worst case for all three payers for 20. And I know we're still learning, so you don't have a complete answer, but I guess one is, where is the risk for reserve when I look on the balance sheet? And the other is, are you fully assuming that you're providing for both the full amount, 900,000 each year?
We are assuming the 900,000, but I know a lot of, I'll have to get back to you on how that sits on the balance sheet.
Right.
On the P&L, it's all set up, those fixed payments.
And I guess the other is just, in talking with your auditors, what their philosophy is, and, when you do year over year, because your total FPP isn't really changing that much, right? We were doubling that, you can understand, you're going to need to have a higher base, but, eventually we're going to find out how these things reconcile, and hopefully it'll be favorable. And if it were favorable, you have quite an extreme going the other way.
Right. I think what too, we didn't necessarily predict at the beginning of OneCare is that we can take that 50% risk coverage, but what happens is we're also limited on our top end of return. And so, when we signed on 18, we used all of our risk reserve and then some. So it was a little bit unfavorable. So.
And are you also tracking for those patients that you're caring for in your hospitals, what the fee-for-service would have been, versus what you're getting for fixed payment? And are you able to see if you're running favorable enough to at least cover your participation fees and some of the investments that you need to do?
We'd like to do more. Tying that together would be amazing. Knowing the patients when they come in, which ones were attributed might be helpful for some of that. But a lot of that is a retrospective review. We might pull a couple patients and we'll get things to see if they're on it. Just like you said, if it's the actual trial is what the payment would have been, what the contractual would have been compared to what the fixed payment is. We made some enhancements to our system, so going forward we'll be able to isolate all of our shadow payments related to OneCare, put those together with the fixed payments, and then compare that to that patient population that you're talking about. So that's something to be developed and enhanced and made better. So at this point, we do it more on an audit basis, on a month-end review.
And then last is just on cost savings, and
Yes.
what other opportunities do you see there? What type of payment do you need to pay in order to participate? Because you guys use an outside resource as well, right, to help you with cost savings, to identify some of your cost savings, the purchasing groups?
Well, I think we're part of NEO, which is the New England Alliance for Health. It's a Dartmouth-affiliated group of hospitals, Mount Scottney, ourselves, Bennington are all part of that. And I think there's still some significant opportunities on group purchasing contracts through the NEO group. We're looking at workers' comp and with a minimum of about 10% savings that's going in if we're to do a group on workers' comp. We already have a group on health insurance, which has helped us on significantly on stop loss. The big bogey out there is always drug costs.
Right.
Especially on oncological drugs, and no one wants to give discounts on those drugs from the drug companies. That's always the biggest challenge that we have. I think that we're constantly looking at how we can reduce the administrative expenses at the hospital. We had one of our vice presidents left to go back into consulting. We did not fill his position. We divvied up his departments. Dr. McGraw got IT, so she's now the Chief Information Medical Officer as well. So I think every opportunity we look at, how do we really need to fill that position? That has to be balanced on the challenges we all have in terms of nurse recruitment and retention as well. But it's a constant state of focus.
Actually, I have one last question, which is on Springfield. You outlined in your answers kind of a pretty small top-line impact for Springfield and more expenses, so an investment. And were you surprised how small that was? And I think you had only a couple $100,000 for top line and $100,000 for expenses.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed the end of what you said.
Oh, they had about, I think they had about 200,000 for top line and about 400,000 for expenses. Rounding. So you're losing about 200,000 on that business?
At least. I think the number we have about 350,000. But you know, it goes back to what we're all about. And this is a community that became an OB desert with the closure of that hospital's birthing center. And we're the closest Vermont hospital. So it was an initiative that we presented to the board that the board entirely endorsed from an economic standpoint. On the other hand, it also is important for us to look at how can we grow our own OB department. And we were heading down below 300 births. And as we've kind of chatted in the past, you know, that gets into a territory of can you really support a birthing center under, you know, 250? It gets really tight. Springfield, I think, was Jackie's 125 births. So we've basically picked up about 50% of the births up there.
And I'm not trying to make money out of it, just trying to say, I thought you would actually would be a little bit more in your top line than that.
Not with the vast majority or Medicaid or free care. If it was commercial, it'd be a different story.
Right.
Which also ties into that increase in the free care. I didn't think we had before, but we would have increased the budget for free care next year a little bit to cover off on some of that free care as well about that.
Yeah, another thing I noticed in your free care, in 2018 it was actually a bit higher, and in 2019 it came back, and now 2020 it's going up. So whether you maybe too much accrued for in 18, some came back, and so it's artificially low, and in 19 it's going back up in 20. Because I'm surprised you're lower 18 to your projection.
That would be part of it, the same with that certain limitation and all the accounts to line up there. Free care is one we look at with time only because free care can be audited and needs to follow the federal guidelines. So anyone applying for free care has to be taken seriously and provided that care and that discount. So we do go back through that and make sure that that's there.
And I was going to do free care and bad debt together, looking at the total. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I'm going to start a little bit where we just ended up. And so it's a little 40,000-foot question. But glad to see the MH is in the black. It's great news. Having sat on this board now for several years and seeing it not so great. So congratulations to all of you. I'm sure it was a long, hard road. We appreciate all the efforts there. Still low margins though. And I think, we've been seeing a lot this year about hospitals struggling, not only in Vermont, obviously nationally. And our population is aging, we're seeing medical technology become more expensive, fixed costs being spread over fewer and fewer people in rural areas. So my big 40,000-foot question, and I think, Dr. McGraw, maybe I'll help all of you could help think about this, but I know since you've done a lot of collaborative work with these other hospitals, you've thought about what is appropriate, you even said, what is appropriate to be delivering in this particular hospital, what do we need to outsource or collaborate with? And I think about that with the births, right? So 120 births a year. A lot of evidence suggests that a number of cases is highly tied to quality. And we've seen, for example, maternity mortality has doubled in the last decade, right? And we know that births delivered in hospitals under 200 births have a much higher risk of maternal mortality. So how do we start to think about, we want access for the people in our communities, but we also want access of a certain quality threshold. So how do we start to think about that? I wonder if you could help us as we're grappling with all of these hospital budgets and what should be delivered where and how and what cost and what quality.
I think you're spot on about the volume and quality piece, and we see that not just in birthing center, but in surgical services. Our clinicians are very concerned about that, and so that's where we do need to be collaborative. There are other methods we can use as well. For example, telehealth. You look at something like neonatal ICU, which we're just in the process of implementing right now. We don't have a pediatric ICU that would be completely inappropriate in terms of our size and the number of deliveries, but nonetheless, we from time to time have pediatric neonatal patients who really need immediate intervention. So providing a telehealth solution like the telehealth neonatal ICU provides them the quality of care, those patients the quality of care that they need in an environment where it wouldn't otherwise be available. So I think we have to start to look at not just what we can provide in the brick and mortar style, but also from a telehealth capacity. And also looking at who are our regional partners for providing care. So for example, we no longer have an ICU in our brick and mortar space, but we do from time to time have patients who become critical in the hospitals. So we changed our model of care, which is the kind of thing I think that we need to do, so that we have critical care nurses in the hospital at any given time to provide that critical care. But then we assess whether or not that patient is going to turn around in a timely way to make sense to be able to keep that patient there, or whether we need to refer them to one of our regional partners, either often Chester Medical Center, which does have an ICU that's really a 24/7 state-of-the-art care, or a tertiary care center such as Dartmouth or occasionally down south into Massachusetts. So it's looking at what are these alternate ways of providing care so that we can make sure that we've got the full range of things that people need locally, like your pediatric neonatal care, without having to have those folks on staff.
It would be really expensive, and the volume isn't large enough.
Right, yeah, if we had, if we could recruit a pediatrician who was a neonatal expert, first of all, they wouldn't be on call 24/7, and second of all, the frequency wouldn't be enough to support it either. So it's looking at these creative solutions, collaboratively hiring clinicians with other facilities. We don't have enough radiology to have an entire staff of radiologists just dedicated to our hospital, but it works very well to have the radiology specialties available to us because of our arrangement with Dartmouth and Hitchcock. So it really takes putting a creative hat on to look at opportunities.
Do you think that, well, two questions from that. Do you have minimum volume standards that you think about with respect to procedures and surgeries, surgeon-specific or hospital-specific, when you're deciding to outsource something?
I think there's some that are very obvious, like the pediatric neonatal intensive care. Others that are a little bit less obvious. We changed some of the GI procedures that we provide at our hospital recently because of those volume concerns. Our gastroenterologist said, I really like doing some of these procedures, but the indications have changed and my volumes are less, and I just don't feel that it's responsible, even though it's a procedure I really like doing. So, we've had these conversations, and some of them are tough decisions. But I think that our clinical staff, our medical staff is really dedicated to really providing high quality care for our community. And so we do have those difficult decisions at times.
Do you think some of that collaboration has helped make you a lower cost center? All the data that we've seen, you deliver care at a lower cost per capita. Do you think some of that is because of this mechanism you have to collaborate with other institutions in your region?
Absolutely. Although if we transfer somebody who needs that intensive care, they're still getting that intensive care, for sure. But we also have a medical staff who is responsive to these concerns, and we have a patient population that is worried about their cost of care. And so our staff is working really collaboratively with our patients to really provide appropriate care, and have been doing that for some time.
Thank you. One of the questions that we asked in our follow-up was about, tell us about some of the departments where your expenses are exceeding your revenues. And there's apparently a very difficult question for a lot of hospitals to answer, but you tried, and I appreciated that. One of the few hospitals that really tried, it was eye-opening a little bit, because you suggested that your physician practices, your med surgery, your ED, your clinic center, and your clinics were all places where expenses are exceeding revenues. Some of it may be Medicare, Medicaid driven, right? Those are areas where there's a lot, Burlington Center, for example, where there's a huge Medicaid population. Is there other things that you can help us understand about some of these centers where their revenues cost to you? It's surprising.
I look at those departments really as not losers but investments. We all know that. And if we don't employ physicians and associate providers, PAs, nurse practitioners, midwives, we're not going to have access. So it's a cost of doing business, and it's a cost that we have got to absorb. Otherwise, the community won't get the care they need. Because I think our number was like a $15 million investment, right, on the physician practices. And that's every hospital has had that, because if you take the independent physicians and who a lot haven't had an EMR, who haven't given benefits to their staff, who don't have the same level of compensation to their staff, you now moving that practice into a hospital environment, you have to have the health benefits, you have to have an EMR, you have to have all those expenses, and not only that, under federal guidelines, they're now seen as a department of the hospital, which in itself brings more costs. So for example, just in terms of equipment sterilization or instrument sterilization, you have to follow the same guidelines the hospital has. So that equipment a lot of times has to be brought back to the hospital to the central sterile processing. If that was an independent practice, they could probably flash sterilize it. So there are a lot of these hidden costs that are involved. But, you know, I look at it, it's eye-opening. It was. But we have to do it.
And I'm sure it's also hard to allocate costs across it.
Oh, absolutely.
How do you allocate costs is a challenge.
And that was one of the challenges we had from a financial situation. How do you allocate the cost of overhead in the hospital throughout the hospital? And we took a stab at it.
And I appreciate that. It's just, trying to understand some of that. These hospitals. I also appreciate your total cost of care analysis. I want to say that to you. I think that was a good deep dive, so I appreciated that. I want to just touch a little bit about the volume, 7.2%. So I just want to make sure that I understand where it's coming from. It's coming from the growth of physician practices. Is any of this qualify under our provider acquisition, kind of the concept being this is care that was already delivered to the community, now it's coming into the hospital, but it's not really new dollars into the system. In some ways, to some degree, and this relates to Maureen's question, the Springfield revenue that's coming in from the birthing center, that was already in the system. We know exactly where it was in Springfield. It's coming into Brattleboro now. That's not new dollars into the system, it's just being transferred. So, one might think, okay, when we think about new patient revenue, net patient revenue, almost when we think about slicing that piece off as not new money to the system. But is there anything else in terms of these are providers that used to be here, the independent providers, they've left, they're slowly coming back, whether they're employed or not? Can you help me think about that? Is there any untapped this is new dollars?
Exactly. So that, again, the key driver is always your medical staff, other than the birthing center or the ED. So I think let her talk a little bit about the recruitment efforts that we've done. A little bit. Yeah.
So I think to answer your question, it is truly a mix of both. We have some new service lines that we haven't had previously, one being a neurologist. So Dr. Gilbert Green joined our team about a year ago to provide on-site full-time neurology services out of our internal medicine practice, which was a really wonderful service to add to our community. It's an area that's been short when it comes to who's accepting new patients, who can take referrals, and he focused on headache. His fellowship was on headache medicine and dizziness, and so we've had a lot of referrals to him for those reasons from our primary care practice. So that's an example of some new services that we hadn't previously had before.
And those traditionally would have gone probably to Cheshire or to DH level.
So that's new to the system. Yeah, some of the OB volume is not new to the system per se when it comes to Springfield, but we did also have an independent OB/GYN physician who retired recently, and we, in our OB/GYN practice, have been the home for those patients to go, and that's been over 100 patients who transferred their care to now see 51 in care in our services. So there is a mix of some new to BMH, not new to the system, but also some brand new services to BMH.
So it might be really helpful if you can unpack that a little bit more for us, because I think we might treat it differently as we're thinking about it.
If actually kind of a breakdown.
Yeah, what is new to the, system altogether? What is new to BMH? What existed before, but now is being replaced? It's different from different.
And we did work last year with staff on 3 physicians, I think, that didn't make it into the budget, but subsequently made it into the budget. So we appreciate that.
My last question just relates to this announcement that was made last week or 2 weeks ago about wage index boost for rural hospitals with respect to Medicare reimbursement. I'm wondering if as an NDH designated hospital will this help you? Do you have a sense of it? It seemed to be, it hit the news. I mean, Alabama was estimating that it was going to bring in $34 million into the state just from the wage boost. So I'm hopeful that this brings more federal dollars into our state, but I haven't been able to get a sense from individual hospitals it's helpful or not.
Let's look at that.
Okay, thank you.
So again, just to follow up, I do think that it's critical that quickly try to document that OBGYN dollars that were already in the system so that you could seek physician transfer adjustment to your NPR for those dollars whenever possible. I do think that the burden on proof for an increase to the guidance on the NPR is really on the applicant, and I think that would help you to try to get to where you want to be. You talked repeatedly about 10% growth in physician practices. We talked about a new neurologist. What are the other physician practices that are going to have?
We have not added any additional practices per se in addition to the neurologist. We added some additional primary care services to both counteract the retired physicians in our community, as well as to support the ongoing ever-increasing demand for patients in need of primary care clinicians, as we see from time to time a trend in some of our neighboring hospitals where they are no longer accepting primary care patients outside of their zip code per se. Those calls can come to us, and we need to be able to provide a primary care outlet for patients and with a focus on preventive care. So that's why it's an ever-increasing area for us to continue to look at recruitment strategies for how do we recruit additional primary care clinicians, retain current primary care clinicians that we currently have.
So Kevin, specifically too, on orthopedics, 2 years ago, we lost one of our 3 orthopedic surgeons. That's where we saw a fairly significant 10% drop in our OR line. We did recruit, Dr. Rack, in January of this year. And with Dr. Thatcher looking at retirement, we have recruited another orthopedic surgeon actually coming out of Canada to start this fall. So that is part of some growth that was there.
So again, if you can try to document that would be.
We'll get more granular for you.
Did you add primary care?
Yeah.
We did have primary care.
All right.
At least 3.
And I think I heard you say the justification for that was to replace did some retire that were private practice in your area?
Yeah, it probably took us a good 2 years to replace the 3 docs that were left and find homes for 6,000 patients. That doesn't, as you know, it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in 6 months. So it was a 2-year process to get to where we should have been. And the challenge for you all, those were independent docs, as we talked about, documented for the staff, and now they're employed positions.
But they were part of the overall system.
Yeah.
I think that's the key, and that's the way this board has tended to look at physician practices when it comes to acquisitions and transfers. So anything that you can give us in writing that makes an argument for that, we greatly appreciate it.
Can I just make a follow-up on the
Sure.
same topic? Because we did adjust the budget for the retired position, primary care positions that you added, but I think if there was, I know you tried without knowing what that independent physician volume was to estimate what that cost is to make the adjustment, so if you think that there was some inaccuracy there, that might be one way to look at it. The other thing that might be interesting, if you're able to do it, but you may not with your system, is looking at in-state versus out-of-state migration. So we've looked at that in the past with St. Johnsbury when they can come in with very high increase there. And Medicine, where some of that increase was coming from out-of-state. So while it was an increase to you, it wasn't necessarily an increase to premium payers. So
Yeah,
just
you're
a couple
bringing
of
in new
other-
customers from out of state, we view it as economic development.
Yeah, that's economic development, but also if you're clawing back care that was totally migrating out of the state, right, back into, but we would all, the market would always pay for it. It's all helpful because as border hospitals, you have different issues that you face, but it's helpful for us to understand where some of that line is.
And then just related to that, the one other thing I forgot to ask you about earlier is when I was looking at the materials from the spring around wait times, which thank you for submitting all that information, your OB times did look a little high, so I'm just wondering if, I know you have that's an area you've really been developing, so I wondered if there's any chance of seeing this come down, or kind of when we would expect to see that.
Thank you for asking about that. Thank you for noticing we diligently track those figures weekly and look at it to determine where do we need to make adjustments when it comes to access to care for our patients. And the OB is one that stands out for us. So some of the things that we've done that you see in our budget is an increase by a nurse midwife to help us with clinic access, also help us with the taking care of critical patients who are not being seen by us. We've also tried to think about creative strategies within our OBGYN department in terms of looking at ways how can we offer different hours to patients, evening hours. Of course, having a presence in Springfield is also a creative way to provide access. But how can we create scheduling templates that best meet the patient needs while utilizing our current resources?
Okay, Patrick, do you or your team have any questions?
That has no further questions.
Susan, did you want to ask your question?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one question, and it's related to diversity and leadership. I'm looking across the room here. I see a lot of diversity. But looking at specific to women in leadership, there was a recent report by Oliver Wyman, a consulting firm, that looked at healthcare leadership and the numbers around women specifically. And I'll just cite a couple of numbers that I think are pretty impressive. First, when they looked at healthcare usage and decision-making, that's made by 80% of the time, that's made by women. And if they did a study of healthcare workforce in healthcare organizations, and women made up 65% of the workforce. That said, if you look at the leadership, 30% of the C-suites are women, and 13% of CEOs are women. And in Vermont, if I do my math correctly, I think it's 15% out of the 14 hospitals, we have 2 women CEOs. So, given those numbers and the decision-making that women make, the fact that women make up such a large part of the workforce, there's the question about diversity in general, LGBTQ or racial diversity, but in terms of healthcare, women do make up such a big part of that decision-making and workforce. what, and I guess I can ask you, Steve, what are you doing, maybe Kat wants to answer this too, to create the opportunities? I mean, obviously, like I said, the diversity I see here in front of me today is great, but is there anything you can cite that that you're doing in your organization or on your board?
Well, I think that, the biggest thing, pretty much the leader of the state is the LGBTQ plus community. You talk about diversity, that's the diverse community that we need to serve better in Wyndham County. So that is our major focus there, and linkage with Fenway Health, which I've already mentioned, the gym and clinic and educational resource for hospitals and medical groups. I don't have many years left. I've been doing this since I was 29 years old, and I'm going to be 65. So the next CEO, Brattleboro, putting me through work, being a woman, and we have several very talented individuals here. Kat can talk about diversity, but we're all in Brattleboro, and Robin was that, and grown up in Brattleboro. When you're from Brattleboro, you need to have a very wide base of diversity. So, I don't know if you want to say anything, Kat.
I guess I'd say, our senior leadership team is heavily weighted with women, which is wonderful. And as Steve mentioned, the LGBTQ initiative has been great, not just looking at it from a leadership standpoint, but really and not just from a patient standpoint, but also really creating a comfortable environment for our staff. And it has allowed many of our staff to be a little bit more open about who they are and make sure that they feel that it is a comfortable environment for them to be out. And so I think we do see some of that diversity increasing routinely.
Great, thank you very much.
So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to the healthcare advocate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I do want to focus for a moment on the bad debt free care. And I appreciate Tom's questions about this. I know that well, from the consumer's perspective, the preference for free care over bad debt is obvious. I just had this dawned on me, this question. I don't know whether from the provider's perspective, I know you care about your patients not having bad debt, but from the provider's perspective, is there anything, is uncompensated care? Am I missing something here?
Uncompensated care plays a factor in Medicare support and some other reports. Uncompensated care, free care plays a factor in Medicare cost report, so there's some reimbursement advantages, and that's why I said earlier that we make sure that number is absolutely correct.
But the category that is bad debt and the category that is free care, is there anything about that distinction from the provider perspective that I'm missing?
Well, the free care is identified up front and adjusted, and it doesn't take months and months of work, if that's what you mean. Bad debt is uncollectible balances, so that could be a year's worth of work trying to collect that money, so is that?
So I don't know, maybe I'll follow up later. I know that the relationship between free care and bad debt is a blunt measure, and that there's many factors from different hospitals that might lead to that relationship looking different. But I want to report to you that in comparison to your peers in Vermont, you're not doing so well. As a ratio, just because they were just in front of us and they happen to be the best, in the best shape, Rutland has a 1.8 to 1 free care to bad debt. That is $1.80 of free care to every dollar of bad debt. And Brattleboro is tied with Gifford and Northwest as being at the bottom of 20 cents of free care to every dollar of bad debt. Now, I saw and I recognize in the questions that you're projecting, you're budgeting for bigger increase in free care, then that's good, and I hear your efforts to make sure people are aware of the free care option. But I did at least want you to know that it appears to be that some of your peers are doing some things to make sure people apply and finish the application process that maybe we could all learn from. Okay.
I do look at free care and bad debt as two different numbers. I mean, they sit on the top line, so we have to look at that as it relates to the MPSR. I noticed that statistic myself. I did look at that, and I looked at it. I mean, it's one of those, again, where we try to have patients apply, and we got to be proactive about it. We're pretty proactive about making sure applications are complete, because we want to get that free care identified. I mean, from a financial accounting standpoint, you want to have all your numbers in a row. You don't want to have numbers out there that you're not aware of, that are going to get. So
The bottom line is, you don't want any barriers for people to seek care, whether it's applying for free care or bad debt, whatever it is. You want to reduce the barriers, and I think we've done a phenomenal job in Brattleboro to reduce those barriers.
And just as a point of reference, the system-wide average is about 60 cents of free care to every dollar of bad debt. And then the one last thing I think I'll say today is that the Healthcare Advocates Office put some effort this year into evaluating hospitals' free care programs. Our staffing and our ability led us to focus on the 5 largest hospitals. We wanted to assure you that we think Brattleboro is important, but we did not do Brattleboro. And so I would invite you to take a look at some of that analysis, and in particular, different hospitals were successful and fell down on the job in different areas, but one area where we found a real pattern was in the plain language summaries. Needing to have 2 years of post-secondary education in order to be able to read the plain language summaries. Just didn't pass the mark, and we did not do your hospital, so I have no idea where you guys fell on that, but we'd be happy to talk to you more about it. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open it up to the public for any comments. So, yes.
I just wanted to make a comment for Susan's question. Just a very quick commercial, Susan, that at the VAS annual meeting, Steve Gordon will be headlining a panel on diversity, equity, and inclusion that will talk about LGBTQ as well as women and other minority groups in Vermont, and feature people to speak on all of those.
Any other public comment? If not, we'll take a 10-minute break and resume at 2:25 with Southwestern. I see Tom is at the back of the room and anxiously waiting for the testimony.